This is Robert Kraft, and I'm coming to you live on SNNLive, and we are at the MicroCap Rodeo 2019 in Austin, Texas. With me right now is Dr. Phillip Chan from CytoSorbents. It's a publicly traded company. The symbol is CTSO. Dr. Chan, welcome back to SNNLive.
Thank you very much, Bobby, for having me back.
It's great to have you as always. So, for our audience, to start off with an overview of the company, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. CytoSorbents Corporation is a NASDAQ-traded medical device company specializing in blood purification to treat life-threatening illnesses in both the intensive care unit as well as in cardiac surgery. CytoSorb is approved in the European Union in 58 countries around the world, generating about $21 million in trailing 12-month sales.
So we last had you on in February 2018, so let's get an update. What's been going on? Every press release since, I'm just kidding, but maybe the last 6 to 12 months.
Sure. So we've been growing actually very rapidly. Over the past year, we've actually grown our company to 155 people worldwide, representing about 50% growth, with most of those hires focused on the commercialization of CytoSorb in many different countries. We've been growing relatively rapidly, about 22% year over year, but we're expecting a very strong year in 2020 as a lot of these catalysts that we've been working on come to bear.
So I'm gonna ask you about those catalysts in a second, but to remind our audience, I mean, what's the size of the target market for your medical device?
Yeah, so what CytoSorb is designed to do, which is the approved product in the European Union, is to reduce the inflammatory toxins in the bloodstream that are causing massive uncontrolled inflammation in a wide variety of illnesses such as sepsis, which afflicts 30 million people around the world, killing roughly 10 million people despite the use of antibiotics. Trauma, burn injury, liver failure, pancreatitis, lung injury on one hand, as well as causing a lot of complications in high-risk cardiac surgery patients on the other hand. Total, we've had about 67,000 human treatments, cumulatively up from 46,000 a year ago, and continuing to make a lot of progress.
I also have to ask about IP. I mean, is your device everything protected? You have a portfolio of patents protecting your way of blood purification?
Yeah, we have 20 issued U.S. patents ranging from composition of matter to methods of manufacturing to device configurations to the use of a wide variety of clinical applications. We also have multiple patents issued around the world and a very strong patent portfolio pending of applications that are under prosecution currently today in many countries.
And one more follow-up before we get to the catalyst is let's remind our audience also about the business model for the medical device.
Yeah, so the business model is that this represents a high-margin razor blade that works in the existing blood pump infrastructure in hospitals around the world, whether or not it's a dialysis machine, a continuous renal replacement therapy machine, or ECMO, extracorporeal membrane oxygenation machine in the intensive care unit, or whether or not it fits into a heart-lung machine found in the operating room. And so CytoSorb sells for about $1,000 a cartridge, and depending on the disease that we're trying to treat, they use one or more cartridges for that application.
Okay, now we're there. So from what you can tell us, what are some of the catalysts for the company now moving forward?
So one of the things that we've been working on is that we know that the demand for our product is there. For example, in Germany, which represents about 65% of our sales, we now have dedicated reimbursements for CytoSorb at more than around $1,200 a cartridge. We sell to the hospital for $1,000, and they get about $1,200 back. We have the support of a lot of the major key opinion leaders. We're in most of the major university and public hospitals throughout the country. We have a very strong sales force and sales team that is helping to support these sales. So Germany represents an ideal market for us, being the third largest medical device market in the world and the largest by far in the European Union. But CytoSorb is been taking off in that application, and I think has a lot of room to grow.
And Dr. Chan, are there any other catalysts that you'd like to talk about?
Sure. So we're expecting very strong growth in 2020. And that should hopefully be catalyzed by a number of different factors. One is that we've increased our headcount in our company to 155 employees. That's 50% growth in about a year, with most of those hires focused on commercialization, sales reps, application specialists, clinical support, and many other factors. We believe that there's a strong demand for our product out there, but we've, to date, have been resource constrained to be able to really go at those, to get at those revenues. But with the additional headcount, we think that that is going to be something that will make a big difference in 2020. On top of that, we have actually a lot of clinical data that is potentially going to read out next year. One of those is the Remove Endocarditis trial This is a 250-patient randomized controlled trial that is being funded by the German government in the area of cardiac surgery and valve replacement because of infected heart valves. Now, infected heart endocarditis, the incidence is rising, particularly in the United States where it's endemic because of the opiate crisis and people using dirty needles to shoot up drugs. And when they inject themselves with bacteria, those bacteria land on the heart valve, and these patients come in typically with a destroyed heart valve from the infection as well as being septic. And it's such a problem in the United States that certain hospitals in the country are seeing 200 patients a year, almost doing one of these surgeries a day at a cost of about $150,000 per patient. So this REMOVE trial that is happening in Germany in 15 centers is now 240 patients into a 250 patient study and will hopefully read out in mid-2020, which should potentially be another major catalyst for growth. On top of that, we have a number of other catalysts, including one really exciting application that we just talked about 2 weeks ago with a couple of press releases, and this is the removal of antithrombotic agents during emergency cardiac surgery. Now, today, these blood thinners, these antithrombotic agents, have sales of about $20 billion. You may have heard of drugs like Eliquis, Xarelto, Plavix, and many others. These are used in patients who've had a heart attack or have other risk factors for having a heart attack to prevent future cardiac events or to prevent stroke or other things. But $20 billion in sales of this, so literally millions of people are on these drugs. The problem is that roughly 4% of patients who are on these drugs have some type of cardiac event that requires emergency cardiac surgery. For example, someone who went in for a stent in a coronary artery, but then they get a clot in that stent. They need to go in for emergency coronary artery bypass graft open heart surgery, for example. Someone who has an aortic dissection needs to go in for surgery. But the problem is when they have these blood thinners on board, roughly 30% of them have severe or massive bleeding that puts them at high risk of morbidity as well as death, but also causes a lot of problems in terms of needing blood transfusions afterwards, having to go back and have exploratory surgery, reopening the chest, and other things. And the good part about CytoSorb is that CytoSorb removes those drugs. And when installed during emergency cardiac surgery, they have the normal bleeding risk of a normal person. And so it is a very compelling application, which we think will be a major driver of sales in 2020.
So I know earlier in the interview you mentioned that right now you're selling in Germany and really have a big push in Europe, but where's the company at in terms of its progress in the U.S.?
Yeah, so currently CytoSorb is distributed in 58 countries around the world, leveraging our European Union approval as the first cytokine adsorber approved in the European Union. In the United States, we're actually in a pivotal trial called the REFRESH-2 AKI trial, or acute kidney injury trial, where CytoSorb is being used in a large 400-patient randomized controlled trial that should hopefully be the basis of U.S. approval, where we are being used to try to prevent or reduce the severity of acute kidney injury following cardiac surgery, which in high-risk populations can be as high as 30%. And studies have demonstrated that the development of even mild acute kidney injury predicts 1 through 5 year mortality after the cardiac surgery. So being able to prevent that could have a great impact on clinical medicine.
And where can audience go and find more information about CytoSorbents?
At www.cytosorbents.com.
My name is Robert Kraft, and I'm coming to you live on SNNLive, and we're at the MicroCap Rodeo 2019 in Austin, Texas. With me again has been Dr. Phillip Chan from CytoSorbents. It's a publicly traded company. The symbol is CTSO. Dr. Chan, always a pleasure.
Thank you, Bobby. Appreciate it.